And it must be a great compliment to Badgers, and you must feel proud about it, that Sky will drop in commentators and pick up the Lancs TV feed, the Badgers feed, for a county championship game that we're providing. You know, we're the only county that are broadcasting live on Geo, and I'm sure I heard Course will talk about 500 million subscribers. It's mind-boggling when you're in that space of pushing boundaries and trying to keep pushing the service level. When you get a stable business and you're looking to grow, you have to challenge yourself to think differently, and how can we do business in a different way? Why wouldn't we ask you to come and help us to do remote broadcasts from here in 2 different countries? Colin, why not?
Daniel, thank you very much for taking the time out. So just want to quickly ask you, obviously we went out to India, we went out to Dubai, we went back to India, we went back to Dubai. Tour was great. It's really a great honour for Badger and Coombs to be doing that and to be supporting you guys and enjoying that opportunity. But I think the first question I really want to ask you is why? Why did you send us out there? What was the reason and the rationale for you doing that?
I think what we found with the growth of Lancs TV, you know, you remember the days of a bit of ragged ball following. You know, we started it to provide members a service during COVID, and we've come so far from just providing a service for members who couldn't physically attend because of COVID to something that's so much bigger than that now. And my experience, the challenge of when you do something well is more questions get asked, more opportunities arise, more challenges. You know, so how far can we take this? And I genuinely believe that with Lancs TV, that's the space that we're in at the moment. We're no longer just providing a service for members who can't attend because of COVID. We're thinking about how can we push the boundaries. We already believe that we're doing more than any other professional county in the UK. And when you've got that mindset, and we're taking our men and women on pre-season tour to 2 different countries, it's, well, what about our fans and members and supporters back home who are missing the cricket season and they want to watch a bit of cricket? You know, historically, you know, for us to try and do that would cost us an absolute fortune out of India. And I think we have a partnership with Badger and Coombs that is innovative, problem solving, and, you know, we set you the challenge. And, you know, so when you're in that space of pushing boundaries and trying to keep pushing the service level, why wouldn't we ask you to come and help us to do remote broadcasts from here in 2 different countries? Colin, why not?
I think I need to keep my mouth shut. But actually, joking aside, I mean, that's the thing. I think if you take a look at your brand, and you know, I mean, undoubtedly we're going to talk about the Indian investment, the 100 and all that sort of stuff. How important is it to show the capability of when you're trying to do a deal like that with an organisation that is very good at what it does in the digital space? How important is it to say, yeah, we're ready, we've got the capability of broadcasting live from 2 different continents? How much confidence does that give you to go into those conversations and things like that?
Very much so. I think when we did our management presentations to different potential investors with a complicated information memorandum document, we were selling Lancashire Cricket, Emirates Old Trafford, the city of Manchester. But to sell something, you've got to demonstrate core capability. And, you know, as a club, we've got core capability amongst a number of areas. And it is with pride that I was able to talk through what we've achieved with Lancs TV. You know, we're the only county that are broadcasting live on Geo, and I'm sure I heard Course will talk about 500 million subscribers. It's mind-boggling. And actually, you know, when you think about that, you know, that's the kind of thing that, particularly when we're targeting the Indian market, why wouldn't we talk about that? And that's definitely, that shows particularly an Indian investor that you're not just looking for a check, but you're looking for a partner, somebody who's interested in Indian fans consuming digitally and live experientially cricket here in the UK.
We talk about that in the moment experience is always so much more engaging. You can see that when you start looking at your social media data and you see that engagement is so much higher organically in that live experience. It's very interesting, you know, when you first came into this role at Lancashire Cricket, did you ever envisage yourself being a broadcast centre? Did you ever have to think? You never think of that. What's it been like having to learn all these new things? Or
well, they talk about not being able to teach an old dog new tricks, but as you get older, you kind of have to recognise that the environment moves, and you either move with the environment or you get left behind. And you know, when I first came to the club, we had, you know, it was about keeping the lights on. It wasn't necessarily about becoming a broadcast centre. So no, that definitely wasn't on my list of things to do. But when you get a stable business and you're looking to grow, you have to challenge yourself to think differently, and how can we do business in a different way? And if a new addressable market for us is 1.4 billion passionate cricket fans in a different country, well, I've got to think about how I sell them the Lancashire Cricket product. And Lancs TV and the collaboration with, you know, Badgers is how we've been able to do that.
It's great when you look at what we've done for the cricket, and we'll come to the 4-day game in a bit. But let's look at what the great opportunity around the women's game's been for us. I absolutely love those double headers. I love the whole idea around it. But I do love it when we get out and we go and bring those games. I think one of the first ones we're doing, I think, is the women are in Southport this year. I think we've got a game there. But off the back of us doing the women's stuff here at Lancs, we ended up getting contracted to do the women's finals for the ECB. And obviously Badger and Coombs, we're very proud of that, and we're very proud of taking on, and I guess this is why we love being here at Lancs so much, is that because we've kind of installed ourselves in the Lancs culture, haven't we, really? And we've embedded ourselves into that, and we take a lot of pride in driving those opportunities forward. But what is really great for us is Lancs TV and Lancashire are affecting the national game in the way that it's being seen. But how important is what we do, not just Badger and Coombs, but Lancs TV and Badger and Coombs? How important is it for the women's game that we're doing this?
I think it's absolutely enormous. I think, but if I just step back to the men's game for a second, it's not a level playing field. So there are some streams currently of men's domestic cricket that are bang average, and there is no current minimum standard. ECB want to get involved. They want to have streaming consistency meetings, but when there's no minimum standard locked into the county partnership agreement, then you can put one analysis camera at one end of a wicket and then it might wobble, and it's not great. So when, you know, one of the biggest challenges we've had as a growing opportunity is the Lancs TV product is so good, is that our members and supporters get frustrated when they're watching an away game sometimes. So I think, so even in the men's game, it's challenging. Having said that, prior to Tier 1, in the women's game, I didn't think I could ever say that it would be worse than some of our men's county championship streams, because that would be a very, very low bar. But it has been. I remember one particular game, it ended up just being audio, and I'm like, this is not taking it seriously. This is not gender equity in sport. Even if you're a county that doesn't have the resources to fund a 10-camera operation here, etc., you can still do a good job with what you have, and some of them don't. But on the women's side, it's almost like, well, it's not, I don't need to worry about that. And that's, for me, that's part of the problem that cricket has at the moment, is that it's still not, as a game, quite there in terms of that gender equity piece. Lancs are, and I'm proud of that. And I think for us, it's about saying, just because we got a game at Southport, we're not going to do that any worse than we would do a men's game at Southport. It's not even a conversation. It's not about saving money. I think when people might turn around and say, oh, well, the commercial revenue that the men generate is X. To me, that's not a conversation. That's not an equity conversation. It really isn't. And I think, actually, Lancashire Thunder last year, we ended up crossing over a point where we'd had more people come and watch a Lancashire Thunder standalone game than perhaps came to a day of county championship or 50 over men's. That's difficult, right? But commercially, the women's game has a massive opportunity of growth. The barrier to entry commercially is low. The return on investment is much more accelerated than in men's elite sport. There are so many opportunities on the women's side, and I think that's why it's great that our collaboration with Lancs TV and Badgers is at the forefront of women's sport, and it's about saying, do you know what, this is important. This is important to us, but it's also important to, there's a lot of fans out there who they want to get the same standard of quality of stream that they get to watch men's cricket, and why shouldn't they?
I struggle a lot in communicating that message out there to the wider sport industry, really. And I think, you know, it frustrates me a lot where people think that it's expensive to do what we do. You know, and if you try and look at bringing in the big broadcast wagons and 50 cameras, yeah, it's going to be expensive. But how do we communicate what we do for growing the women's game in any sport to try and make the old school, the old guard, understand that it's different. It's a different approach. The audience doesn't sit necessarily yet on Sky Sports. It might sit in the digital space really well. And if you look at the Ilona Maher effect in regards to that star in the sport, bringing the audience to that game. We've done some research where we've looked at the social media accounts of a lot of female rugby players, and it's massive. The value of that whole collective is huge. So how do we communicate it to the powers that be that actually, even if it's just a marketing exercise, it's still a valuable marketing exercise to do? I struggle with it because I think people are still blinkered or locked in the old way of how it works. Now, you've obviously experienced the Badger and Coombs way for the past couple of years, so much so that you're happy to keep us around for even longer. I'm definitely here for a while, but what can you say that will make people understand that this is a different approach, that there is a different approach, and the audience is in a different place? You know what I mean? The women's game has an audience in a different place.
I think this is difficult. It's systemic in the sports industry, unfortunately, at the moment. We have to keep pushing. We have to keep calling stuff out. I think part of it is about education. You know, for any of your viewers that haven't watched Bring the Thunder documentary, they should, because we talk in there about getting the governing body to look at this through a different lens. And that, being open, has been a battle over the last couple of years. I'm delighted this year that we have a Vitality Women's Blast, and that a number of those games are going to be broadcast on Sky. Now, that's a big breakthrough. I think one of the barriers has been the historic view that Sky have two big OB trucks and it cost £80,000 to tend them to a ground, and so that becomes very challenging and very difficult commercially. But technology has moved on so fast now that you don't need an OB truck at a ground. We've proven it with, a number of times now, and it must be a great compliment to Badgers, and you must feel proud about it, that Sky will drop in commentators and pick up the Lancs TV feed, the Badgers feed, for a county championship game that we're providing. Now, the broadcast values, the quality that is expected as a minimum from Sky is significant. And the fact that Sky are comfortable to go, yeah, I'm happy to take that feed and drop in a couple of commentators. It's a proven model, actually, of where the sport can evolve and do things differently. And so actually we should be broadcasting more women's T20 games. So even if they're not on Sky, we should find a way of being able to encourage Sky to go, well, we do it in the men's county championship, actually. So are there some games where you don't bring some OB trucks down, but you drop in some commentators like you do with the men's county championship? And I think that's the thing that we have to keep talking about. I think because it's a bit of the Wild West at the moment, so there's no minimum standards in streaming in county cricket. And I think the ECB could put in some minimum standards, but with some guidance to say that there are some minimum standards, but that we can get that for this amount of money a year. And I think that it's that education piece that doesn't exist at the moment. I think if we can work with the ECB to come up with a plan that can support some counties that don't have the resources that we're able to bring to Lancs TV to say there is actually a minimum plan that you could put together that would be better than what you've got, but we can do it for this amount of money a year.
And Lancs TV and Braddon and Coombs can help them with that, as it
They
happens. As we've done it before. And so then we know that there's a tried and tested way of supporting the women's game and the growth in the women's game, and like you say, connecting it to commercial opportunities and engaging the audiences in a different way, because we know that young aspirational women don't sit on a Sky Sports subscription at the moment. They sit in that digital space. But let's take a look at the 4-day game and the men's county game. It's exactly the same. A lot of people aren't blessed with 4 days off during the week, from work, but it could quite easily sit on their laptop at work, and they could be sat in the corner, they could be getting on with their work. The audience for a 4-day game doesn't necessarily need to pack out the stadium, does it? It can sit anywhere in the world. And I think what we do with the 4-day game here, to bring that to audiences beyond the four walls of Emirates Old Trafford, why do you think that a lot of other clubs don't see that opportunity as much as we're seeing that opportunity? What is it a blinkered way of old way and not thinking of the new way?
I think it's often it can be a fear of the unknown and a fear of cost. Some of the counties, don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of cash flow, and so anything new or different, from paying players, putting the lights on, is all a bit scary. And I think actually this is where the education piece around actually technology has moved to a point where there can be a base package that doesn't have to break the bank. And I think a lot of them, and I think it's the ECB that can help with that, because the ECB want to go minimum standards, but now we're in this kind of wild west where the minimum standards don't exist. I think if the ECB could say, we want you to get to minimum standards, but it's not going to cost you more than this to get to minimum standards, I think that's what's going to help.
Let's give them a shout. Let's have a chat with them. Just tell us, we'll just wrap up in a second, but just tell us, because it's not like you're a risk taker. Well, you are a risk taker, but you know what I mean. It's like you're in charge of a very significant, important brand here. We're 160 years old. Whether I'm going to see 200 years, I don't know, because I was trying to work it out the other day. I will be old if we ever make it that far.
Yeah, me too.
So, but it's a really important role to not screw up Daniel, right? So, but what gives you the confidence? What is it that lets you sit there and go, yeah, I'll let Colin put a microphone on a player in the outfield in India, and we'll let Walt sit here and have a chat with him 5,000 miles away? What gives you the confidence to take those risks when I come up with some really stupid ideas?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've always taken a view in my career to take calculated risks. People often see me as a risk taker, but I've always got a contingency or a backup plan in my back pocket, and so I'm never reckless with an organisation's resources. But there are the counter to that is I've worked with a number of people, particularly when I work for a couple of PLCs, who don't want to make a decision. They're almost afraid of making a decision because they're worried about how that might impact their future path. As I've gone on, I've always kind of taken the view that to move forward, sometimes you have to step out of the day-to-day. You have to do something that's different. And that's going to require taking a breath and going, well, let's have a go. Why not? Because if you don't try things, when and you'll never know. But also, I look at, with your support, we successfully hosted our 4th travel trade and inward investment event in India. I'm not aware of any other county that have done that. We've done 2 in Mumbai and 2 in Bengaluru. Each one has got better. And I remember the first one was a bit seat of the pants, but it's a case of you learn from what you know, and you think, right, how can I'm not going to worry about the things that we got terribly wrong, because in operations stuff happens and things go wrong, but that's part of the constant improvement process. And as long as you kind of can have a thick skin and not get upset when you get criticism, because when you make decisions you're going to get criticised whether you like it or not. If you don't, particularly in sports, if you don't like being criticised, don't get a job in sport. That would be my advice. But you have to take it on the chin and listen to the feedback and go, okay, we had a go, we didn't get it right, So what can we do next time that we can make it better? So that's always been my philosophy, is not worrying about getting something wrong, being able to acknowledge that you've got something wrong. I look at sometimes different football managers in their post-match press conferences, and some are great, where they'll accept responsibility and go, do you know what, I got it wrong today, it wasn't the players, I got it tactically wrong or whatever, and I'm like, wow, okay. And then you get another, and I've seen one particular manager, I won't say who it is, who I don't think I've ever seen take responsibility for a loss or a bad result. And I think the only way you learn and move forward and grow is to acknowledge that, do you know what, this probably isn't going to be perfect, but that's okay.
And I think that's the beauty of the digital space as well, because when we look back at coming out of COVID, and this is exactly what like you said before, is that when you create a tangible, relatable product that is connectable to its audience, so it's so relatable, I think, and that's the beauty of certain sports over other sports. And I think it's one of the things I love about cricket so much, and rugby to be fair, is that accessibility to the actual stars that are out there in the middle. That connection is priceless. And for those aspirational sports fans out there to be able to see it in its rawest form sometimes and connect to it in that way. I mean, when we brought that fan in to Sedbergh and had them chatting to Belly in the outfield, I mean, we need to do more of that, because that, you think about a young aspirational girl, 8, 9, 10 years of age, sat there talking to Ellie in the outfield during a game. If we can create those kind of moments, that young 8, 9, 10-year-old could be the future star of England. And that's happened because we've created and set up a tangible, real, authentic, relatable piece of media content that connects those two worlds together.
It's creating those consumable bits of content, you're right. And one of the things as we evolve the brand and evolve the product offering is, we talk about 4 days of county championship, and if you're retired and living in Canada, great. If you're not retired, but you'll still have an interest in the county championship, it's it's moving. I know we're talking about, let's develop during the season, a monthly magazine program where we do a half-an-hour program every month during the season where we do a review of the games that have happened so far, a bit of a highlights plan, and then a preview of the games to come. And then, there's a lot more people that can find time to watch half an hour when they're travelling or in a hotel somewhere than they can to watch 7 hours of county championship.
We spoke to Scott a couple of months ago, and we was in fact he's on one of our badgering episodes, and we spoke about what our influence on his commentary, and he said that it's changed the way he commentates by having the ability to see all those cameras, but go round the grounds during his broadcasts and see the pictures and see the wickets and all this. We were the first ones to do it, to connect all the other county games through to us, Lancs TV. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of, come to Lancs TV, and that's where cricket is. You know what I mean? And we can do more of that, I believe. So, but look, we could chat, because we haven't even spoken about our DJ prowess yet and our music styles and all those other things that we're so cool, because we are cool, even though we're older, we're still cool.
And who's going to be the starting number 8 for the British Lions first test?
It's going to be an Irishman. It has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be.
I think so.
Well, this has been really useful and really helpful, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it was an incredible thing, wasn't it, to promote the Northwest, Greater Manchester particularly, via United Restream at that time. And you've been on the journey with us,
absolutely,
in terms of Greater Manchester, the Northwest, where we're going, and you've really helped us promote what we're all about, and getting the energy into this devolution journey that we're on. 20 years on, the BBC, in my view, is in an immeasurably stronger position because there are different accents on the airwaves. There's different feel to their content because of Media City, and because that it's brought talent through that otherwise wouldn't have had its opportunity. The national broadcaster, I would say, is in a stronger position. AI could be brilliant and will be brilliant, I think, in terms of the amazing advances it will bring. But let's not let the content of creators just be, hoovered up. You embody what Greater Manchester is about. It's more than a business, it's a belief, I think, isn't it, in the place. And what we're trying to build it into. So it's not just like a check, it's more than that, and you embody that.